So there I was, getting ready to leave for college. My parents had been saving for this moment since before I was even born. I had made it through those horrifying ACTs. I was going to be getting away from my bratty little sisters, whom I love very, very much. And I was going to be living with some of my best friends. My life was about to start. But my college experience only lasted for 2 months. I soon found myself living a complete nightmare. I was 17. He was 32. I was traumatized and changed forever by the beatings I took and the emotional torture I endured at the hands of a boyfriend. I heard every day that I was a bitch, a slut, worthless. At least he didn't call me fat, because that would have really pissed me off. How in the hell did I get myself in a situation like this? I never once saw my dad hit my mom. I never even heard him raise his voice at her. As a matter of fact, my upbringing was as pretty close to perfect as possible. But no matter how bad the abuse got, I wouldn't leave. I would go back and take more, rinse and repeat. And the abuse did get much, much worse. I'm not going to go there with you guys just yet, but eventually you'll get the picture. I was pregnant at 18, no prenatal care, and living in an apartment in the middle of July in 100-degree weather with no air conditioning and no TV, because that's absolutely what's important here, was that I didn't have a TV to watch at the time. All I had to eat was rice and corn. I'm clearly eating way more than that now, so don't feel too sorry for me. I had my first baby boy just after my 19th birthday. Not long after bringing him home, I found myself standing outside of our apartment in the snow during a blizzard in only a ripped t-shirt and underwear. Wet, cold, bleeding, bruised. His spit dripping down my face. My baby crying in my arms. The door was locked. We weren't being allowed back in. The door was locked. We weren't being allowed back in. I was completely helpless. Not knowing what else to do, I knocked on the neighbor's door. Karen answered immediately. I had never spoken, only seen her, as I wasn't allowed to look at or talk to anybody. She let us in and gave us some blankets so we could get warm. My son and I were crying. We were trembling and terrified. I didn't have to say a word. She already knew. She comforted me and told me to get help, to leave and get somewhere safe. This would be my life if I didn't. What kind of man could do this to a woman and child? Well, I'm going to tell you what kind of man. The kind of man who, on my birthday, borrowed $20 from me, Walked down the street to Walgreens, bought me a generic fricking curling iron, brought it back, handed it to me, still in the plastic Walgreens bag, with the receipt still inside. Didn't even give me the change. Loser. That's the kind of man I would be spending my life with. I vividly remember the day I finally kicked him out. He took our clothes, beds, my underwear, everything. I didn't care. My son and I were free from torture, free to live the way we wanted to live. I remember the moment I was able to tell my mom that this was done. It was all over, and seriously this time. She cried, I cried. It was so liberating. My sister Nikki and I drove to St. Louis to pick up a friend of hers from the airport with Independent Women by Destiny's Child blaring on repeat almost the entire way there. I was Beyonce. I started calling my friends one by one with an apology. I had a voice. I never once looked back after that day. I eventually figured out a way to go back to college. Now, it wasn't that college experience that 17-year-old girl had dreamed of. I would ride the MTD to Parkland every day. I remember waiting at a bus stop in Savoy, and I saw a man walking his dog. That man, a complete stranger, came up to me and asked me where I was going. When I told him, he said, "Stay in school. Don't quit. No matter how tough it gets, never give up." And I didn't. And do you know who that man was? Former U of I men's basketball coach Lou Henson. So I guess you could say we're totally best friends now. It was a Friday afternoon when I received a phone call from the Chancellor Hotel offering me a job in their sales office making a whopping $12,000 a year. Felt like Christmas. I immediately started calling daycares. I made call after call after call. And after being turned away from nearly every daycare in town, a lady named Barb, who owned a really small daycare on Mattis, called me back. I said, "Look, I'm a single mom. I just got a job and I start on Monday. I won't have any money until my first paycheck." She said, "Stacey, don't worry about it. Bring him in on Monday and pay me when you can." So here's the deal. Every single one of us gets through the tough times because there is someone there standing in the gap to help us close it. Lots of people want to ride with you in the limo, but what you want is someone that will take the bus with you when that limo breaks down. We all have a story, and many of us walk down the hardest path possible, and that's because it's just the way life is. It ain't all sunshine and rainbows, right? People are put in our lives for a reason. The heroes of my story have their own stories. My neighbor, Karen, who helped me, she shared with me on that fateful night that there was once a time in her life when she felt helpless and scared and afraid, just like me. Years later, I was picking up my son from school and I ran into her. I had the opportunity to thank her, to let her know that because she helped me, I made it out. I had survived. Karen Cottrell, who is here in the audience tonight, thank you. Thank you. That lady Barb I talked about at that really small daycare on Mattis. Barb Sullivan, the owner of Next Generation. Thank you. By the way, I never did pay her on time, ever, and there is a really strong chance I still have an outstanding balance there with her. My parents are the true heroes in my story. Their door was always open. I could always count on them, and I still can. They are my angels. Mom and Dad, thank you. As I look back on all the different parts of my story, I don't always remember what people said to me, but I always remember how they made me feel. And I could tell this as a story of heroism, or I could tell it as a story filled with tragedy and defeat. It's actually both. It made me who I am, a survivor, a conqueror of obstacles, a fighter. And the fact that I was able to get out of this situation is a trophy that I will hold on the highest shelf. I am so very proud to share with you tonight that I have a loving, caring, kind, protective husband and 3 kids, all of whom are safe, and one even likes me. Life is about the journey, not so much the end result. It was Rocky Balboa who once said, "You, me, nobody is going to hit as hard as life, but it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward."